Good day, everyone. I hope you're all ready for an end to this arc. I just realized how long it's been going for, and it scared me a little bit. While I don't want the rewrite to go on forever, I also don't want to skimp out on details too much. So it's a very difficult balance to strike. Today is the sister episode to Mondays, where we wrap up all the loose ends that were left wide open. I'll continue to be long-winded for a few more episodes, but I plan to streamline this war compared to my videos up to now. It's not going to be jarring, we're just going to take slightly larger steps between plot points. But until then, on with the show. Rasa's exhausted now, bewildered by Shukaku's continued rampaging despite his attempts to quell it. The Leaf Jonin who have leapt in to help him are also ragged now, utilizing their strongest jutsu to little or no effect. Anything that does seem to affect the Sand Spirit does so only for a few seconds. How humans figured out how to imprison these beasts is beyond all of them, and if Shisui somehow freed the other one, the village would stand no chance. In an effort to conserve chakra, our known Jonin have taken to running along Shukaku's arms and going for more vital strikes. They're convinced that a wound to its eyes would cost more energy to heal, despite Shukaku recovering instantly from every single attempt. Nonetheless, it's become annoyed by its flies and begins batting at them. Caught in the air, unable to dodge, Asuma becomes Shukaku's target as it swings one of its powerful arms. In a split-second decision, Kurenai jumps in the way, pushing Asuma aside and taking the full strike herself. The force of the hit shoots Kurenai through the air, crashing through several nearby trees before slamming into the ground. Panicked by the strength of Shukaku, Asuma abandons his post to tend to Kurenai. Not missing a step, Kakashi calls on his former fellow Anbu to rally beside him. Some of them have already taken grazing strikes and are a little worse for wear. Not to mention that all of them are simply exhausted from their jutsu use, impatient now that Rasa hasn't figured out how to imprison the beast yet. Landing beside Kakashi, they nod to him, prepared for his plan despite their exhaustion. Taking a page out of the Seven Swordsmen's book, Kakashi works with the other four Anbu to create ninjutsu in tandem. Not needing to produce nearly as much chakra as when they were alone, all five belt out a fiery breath that is large enough to scorch Shukaku's entire backside. Turning in place to see who struck him, Shukaku's scorched back cracks as a brittle wall instead of churning sand and slows its movement down. Following Kakashi to Shukaku's left side to evade its struggling gaze, Kakashi aligns with them for another fire breath. They don't need to create fancy techniques or use a lot of chakra. Whatever slows Shukaku down or injures it would surely keep the village safest. Before the fire hits Shukaku, it snaps to the left and attempts to strike them where they stand. The fire scorches its body again, burning its body solid enough to slow its strike and allowing the group to flee from harm. In this time, its backside has already healed, proving their efforts in vain. Perhaps if there were more Jonin to aid, this method would prove incredibly effective. At the hands of just five, though, they couldn't maintain the pressure consistently enough. Looking down at Rasa as he continues to draw on his golden sand in vain, Kakashi wonders what they're supposed to do now. The Anbu around him are keeping a strong front, but he knows better than anyone how exhausted they all truly are. Instructing two to go to Shukaku's left side, and two to its right, Kakashi tells them to attack from distance so they don't get caught in what he must do. Nodding, the Anbu distance themselves from Kakashi as his Sharingan becomes Mangekyo. Though it's a dojutsu he's had since he was a kid, there aren't very many emergencies that require its use. He knows how to use it, but using it as little as he does keeps him rather unsure of its power. Regardless, it's Obito that he thanks for the eye every time he uses it, and it was Obito that gave him the augmented Mangekyo. Glaring at the Ichibi, Kakashi takes a breath before concentrating on the center of its body. The Kamui doesn't care what it's sucking up, big or small. It's a major chakra suck, regardless of whether Kakashi aims for a finger or a whole body. Luckily, Shukaku is entirely stationary in all of this time, so he knows at least that it shouldn't be moving. The sand of Shukaku's body starts whirlpooling on itself as the wormhole forms from beneath the surface. Seemingly feeling this starkly different technique, Shukaku turns to see Kakashi alone. Reaching an arm back, the sand spirit's about to crush Kakashi when it suddenly falls to the ground. Having finished using Kamui, Kakashi successfully destroyed the Ichibi's entire body and legs. Left with only shoulders and a head, Shukaku roars in frustration, forced now to reproduce its body from its wealth of chakra. Landing and, well, therefore stepping on its head, Rasa connects with the seal on its forehead and successfully shuts down any furthering of its transformation. From here, it's just a steady stream of chakra until the Tanuki is forced back entirely and Gaara emerges once more. Covering the Sharingan, Kakashi sways, suddenly lightheaded from the cost of the ability, and falls to his knees. Landing on either side of him, the Anbu kneel to help him. Panting, Darui struggles to keep his feet as he barely deflects Kushimaru's now lazy strikes. Too tired now to use his Black Lightning in any capacity, Darui is covered from head to toe in cuts. Hinata tried to help, but she was far too slow to affect any real difference against Kushimaru. Kicking Darui in the wrist, Kushimaru easily disarms him, leaving the Cloud Ninja open now to any manner of savagery. Holding his shoulder, Neji walks through the forest, watching the fight unfold with his Byakugan. He's so tired from refusing medical aid that his vision is blurred and he can't entirely make out what's happening ahead. When he'd gone to the stands to assist his father and Hanabi, his father charged him with finding and protecting Hinata. But it was finding her that was challenging. By the time he had found her, she was falling into the woods, and he didn't have the energy to protect from the fall. But falling some distance wasn't the real danger to her. It was the swordsman below. Feeling the wound Omoi gave him in the shoulder, Neji wonders why he let that strike happen in the first place. The swing was so slow. He just wanted to prove a point. Now he's not battle ready for his number one task of protecting Hinata. He's low on chakra, he's tired, and he's wounded. And he's nearly in range to confront one of the dreaded swordsmen. Pulling a scroll from his pack, Neji unfurls it and conjures out a satchel of survival tools. Watching the fight all the while, he cracks open the pack and applies healing salve to his injuries where it counts. He wraps his shoulder as well as he can to staunch the bleeding and pops a food pill. It only feels bad that he won't be able to fight this swordsman at his best. If he can pin even one chakra point, he could reasonably force the man to flee. Finally reaching an appropriate range, Neji swallows and forces the pain into a tiny recess of his mind before charging in for an attack. As Darui collapses, sliced to ribbons, Neji emerges from Kushimaru's backside. As Kushimaru turns to face him, Neji activates his rotation, forcing the swordsman to leap away. Cutting the rotation short, Neji wastes no time in ordering Hinata to run as he turns to cover her escape. Crooking his head as to why so many people are so willing to protect her, Kushimaru deduces that she must be some incredible asset to the village. As he takes a step closer to Neji, two Anbu land nearby and attack his flanks. The three elite ninjas spin around one another as Kushimaru is forced to keep all of his attention on his new and fresh opponents. Not stopping to watch at all, Neji turns 180 degrees, grabs Hinata's hand, and pulls her in as fast a sprint as they can muster to flee. Kushimaru sees them leave as he's weaving around the attacking Anbu, encouraging him only to execute the two elites faster. Despite their attempts with bladed weapons to keep him pinned, Kushimaru utilizes his weapon's razor wire once more to slice and dice into them relentlessly, ruthlessly. As they reel from the flash of damage, Kushimaru abandons the fight with them to chase down Hinata and Neji. Appearing in front of them, Neji pushes Hinata back and activates another rotation. This time, Kushimaru's sword stabs and slices, and the chakra barrier from the rotation seems to dissipate as if the swordsman could cut chakra itself. Disarmed completely, Neji has no other option but to dive at Kushimaru for hand-to-hand combat. Stopped in his charge, Kushimaru drives his sword into Neji's shoulder with such viciousness that he's nearly amputated. Collapsing in shock, Neji only has time to look at his nearly dismembered arm before passing out. Landing in the forest where Darui is unconscious, A surveys the area. In his bloodied hands is Shibuki, the blade formerly of Jinpachi. 2 Anbu lay unconscious as well, their wounds quite severe. Kneeling beside his protege, A surveys the damage. If Kushimaru's blade wasn't poisoned, the bleeding alone would have been enough to end someone's life. Snarling at the damage, A carefully picks up Darui and takes one last look around, seeing Neji off a ways, still unconscious and also severely injured. Favoring his own fallen, A leaves with just Darui in tow, abandoning the Anbu and Neji to their fates. Having adapted to Jinin's striking style, Tsunade is now able to dodge every swing he makes. However, she stands no chance of landing a successful blow either. Regardless of how predictable Jinin's attacks are, his recovery from said attacks are too fast for an opening. Clicking her tongue, Tsunade summons out Katsuyu in a smaller form than she's otherwise capable. In rare form, Tsunade decides to use Katsuyu for offensive purposes, sending her summon in to create an opening. Squishing Katsuyu with his mallet, Jinin's shocked when the acid splashes everywhere, and he's forced to leap backward. His mallet begins to smoke as the acid attempts to eat into it. Looking at the squished summon, he's disgruntled to see Katsuyu reforming from her splattered self. From where she sits, she spits acid at him, forcing him to again change position. With her own speed as a Sannin, this allows Tsunade to sneak behind Jinin and strike him while he's distracted, sending him through several trees. Thanking Katsuyu for the help, she charges to meet the swordsman as he lumbers to his feet. Before she can land another strike, his axe is inches from her face, and she's forced to stop and dodge. As she lands, a ball of fire consumes Jinin completely. Turning to see the assist, Tsunade finds Akane Uchiha poised for another strike, waiting for the fire to abate. He doesn't even nod at her in recognition as he remains prepared to attack again. As Jinin emerges from the flames unscathed, Akane is already on his flank, releasing a kunai from his fingertips. Ducking the kunai, Jinin swings his burnt mallet at the much smaller Uchiha target, who manages to avoid the blow. As Akane dodges, he also finds another vantage point to attack from, throwing a shuriken from nearly melee range. Reaching, Jinin catches the shuriken out of the air, as a second shuriken hidden by the first jabs into his hand. Without even recoiling, Jinin takes the caught shuriken and jabs it into Akane's back, halting the agile teenager. Despite his gusto, Akane was rather easily outmaneuvered by Jinin. When Tsunade attempts to free Akane from Jinin's clutches, he cleaves the ground with his axe and smacks it with his mallet, causing an enormous eruption around them. By the time the quake has passed, Jinin has fled. Tsunade pursues his vague direction, desperate to save Akane from the swordsman. Minato appears beside Inoichi, likely having one of his kunai at the detention center, kneeling and addressing his wound with a modest level of medical ninjutsu. He puts a hand on Inoichi's shoulder, confirming that he's okay for now. Inoichi does not bother with his own help, urging Minato to go protect his daughter. Shadow Clone Jutsu, Minato says, projecting out 5 clones who roll their shoulders and crack their knuckles for the hunt they're about to have. Without sharing a single word with them, his clones all vanish in pursuit of each of the traitorous Anbu. He reassures Inoichi that the Anbu that attacked him weren't who they seemed to be, before vanishing himself. Reappearing at the Kage heads, Minato looks down where his sensory technique detected Danzo and dives to the location. Landing on a rooftop to cut off an Anbu, Minato wipes a hand across his mouth, and as it pulls away, a Rasengan forms in his palm. Seeing the Hokage in his path, the Anbu immediately diverts direction, pushing Danzo to do the same. Danzo himself, seeing Minato, begins to resist the Anbu's pushing, fighting back against his captor. Pushing Danzo aside, Minato holds the Anbu by the arm as his Rasengan carves into his chest. Exploding in a burst of water, the Anbu's clone vanishes and lightning strikes from below, hitting nothing but water. Throwing his kunai at the Anbu, Minato creates Shadow Shuriken Jutsu, duplicating his shuriken into a dozen. Teleporting at dizzying speeds between the kunai, Minato lands on the ground behind the Anbu as he falls, covered in stab wounds. Picking up the body, Minato jumps to Danzo's side, who thanks him for the save. Minato tells him, guilty or innocent, he was already a criminal, and he'll be treated as such, tying him up for safety. Appearing atop his Kage head again, Minato climbs to the top of the cliffs to head off Shisui. Reaching the top with his clones, Minato sees Shisui with a kunai ready to kill Sasuke, and it takes just a quick dash to intercept. Assisted by Shisui's blast of fear, the Sanbi immediately erupts from its host, to Minato's dread, and Shisui attacks him from behind. "The cowardice!" Minato decries, throwing a paper seal onto the Sanbi to further halt growth, and turning to face Shisui with his entire attention. Naruto gurgles quietly as he drops first to his knees, and then to his face, but the fox doesn't come out. As Minato swings a fist at Shisui, his body flickers to safety, only to find that Minato is in the exact same position relative to him, moving just as fast as him to the exact same place as him. Knocked back by the punch, Shisui draws out a kunai as Minato pulls out his own famed kunai. Throwing it straight up as Naruto often did, Minato performs his own altered jutsu of the second Hokages, mutually multiplying kunai. The conjured kunai only last for seconds, but Minato never needed them to last any longer than that. As the area is blotted by the shadow of 1,000 kunai, Minato pulled out another set of 4 shadow clones, and before Shisui can lift his hands to guard, he's been pummeled from every angle by Minato. Collapsing to the ground, overwhelmed by the shadow jutsu of Konoha's Hokage, Shisui coughs and splutters in amazement. He wasn't even enough of a challenge to force out the 4th Rasengan. With every fiber of his being, Shisui pushes to his knees, afraid now to look upon the threat of Minato. It was only seconds, and that was all that was needed. The Sanbi didn't even have enough time to overwhelm the Kage seal and continue transforming yet. Shisui's Sharingan twirls to become Mangekyo, and he's forced to use his last option. Ignoring Shisui for a moment, Minato turns to the Sanbi and pulls out a scroll. From the scroll, Minato conjures several shadowy tendrils that wrap around the juvenile beast, whose spiked shell has begun to form. Regressing quickly, the beast vanishes and returns the host to their former self. Sighing with relief, Minato turns back to the still recovering Shisui. Gripped by the collar, Minato lifts him up and tells him he's under arrest for his untold crimes against the land of fire. Making eye contact, Shisui activates the strongest genjutsu in his arsenal, forcing Minato to release him. Staggering away from the Hokage, who is now frozen in place, doubtlessly fighting furiously to escape, Shisui looks at the unconscious kids with a sinister grin. Snapping free from the genjutsu, Minato falls to a knee, panting profusely as sweat drizzles down his face. As he attempts to remember what the contents of the genjutsu was, his memory fades away as if he had woken from a dream and the experience was dissolving away. Shaking his head, Minato turns back to see everyone still lying unconscious. Refocusing, Minato runs to his son's side. Turning Naruto onto his back, who's stiff as a board, Minato places a hand on his chest and searches for any irregularities. The only irregularity he can find is that the fox didn't even stir at the explosion of fear that Naruto must have experienced. As Shukaku recovers, he looks around and asks Minato, "Where's Choji?" And that's the end of today's episode. This one was really fun to make because I already had the conclusions from last episode, so I was able to just focus on the meat of the events. The consequences of these battles will be visited in Monday's episode. As for what happened today, I wanted Minato to be portrayed as efficiently powerful, not explosively powerful. But he's got a lot up his sleeve too, considering the fact that he's been alive for 12 years longer than his canon counterpart. That's time to hone his techniques and invent new ones. Due to using a lot of his kunai to get around the village quickly, I wanted him to also be able to rely on clone jutsu and multiplication in general to create temporary duplicates of his kunai in battle. And him relying almost solely on his flying Raijin, I also wanted to convey the gap between him and Shisui. Shisui is crafty and strong, but he chose an opponent who was exactly able to shut down all of his attacks. What use is the body flicker against the flying Raijin? And what kind of genjutsu did he use on Minato? Why would he take Choji? Wait a second, what about the others? Akane and Hinata too. Lots to ponder in the next couple days. Until then, the sky's the limit.